Wow, it's hard to feel good about anything that happened against Texas A&M.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me is Montgomery radio veteran Darrell Dapprich as we are recapping now Auburn's 27-10 loss at the hands of Texas A&M. Darrell, in a game where there was no offense, hardly any offense to be found for the Auburn Tigers, and it happened in a way that was different than Cal. I think in Cal, you could look at certain moments and say, okay, turnovers were the problem, and okay, if you don't fumble in these situations, all of a sudden this is a better looking offense. With what happened against Texas A&M yesterday, I don't really feel like you can look back and say, yeah, there's a lot of meat that we left off the bone.
No, you're right. There wasn't like missed opportunities or, hey, this turnover stalled the scoring drive. Now, there were some penalties that I think hurt Auburn a little bit when they got inside the red zone that backed them out of field goal range a couple of times, but the offense just never had any rhythm. And I guess, against Cal, I felt like it was just going to happen. It was inevitable that Auburn was going to do something and turn it around. I was waiting for that drive or that big play that ultimately came. I just never really got that sense in this game. I just did not feel like a sustained offensive drive was going to happen or a big splash play was going to happen. And the reason for that was not only the penalties, it was the very few opportunities that Auburn had in the first half and even in the first quarter where I feel like, look, it was it was a game that was two scores. It was a wide spread. But if you hit on some of those opportunities early, you never know how that changes the complexion of a ball game. I'm not saying Auburn would have won the game. I'm just saying if had Auburn taken a 7-6 lead when Payton Thorne overthrew Jay Fair, who would have walked in, I don't know how that would have changed complexion, momentum, different things during the course of the semantics of a football game. So that happened. You get down inside the 25 or whatever it is, and you try the pitch play that luckily did not get called a fumble. It was the right call, but could have been even more disastrous. Auburn seems to catch a big break, takes a loss on the next play, can't kick a field goal. Those little things add up because Auburn could have went into halftime 6-6 ultimately. And I think that the first drive of the second half is always huge, and it set the tone for the offensive ineptitude, frustration, and just impotency that Auburn saw the rest of the football game to go backwards like that when you had a chance to
not good.
Get a field goal and then come back and maybe score the first possession of the second half. That set the tone and really painted the picture.
Yeah, it's not good. And, this doesn't really matter, but I do want to be correct. You mentioned the red zone a few times. I don't think Auburn ever took a snap in the red zone. I don't think. They made it to A&M's 49, A&M's 43, A&M's 36. 45 and 31. Yeah. So, it's just, they never really got anywhere to where they even could
that's a good point.
Zone or anything.
Let me clarify. I shouldn't have used the word red zone, but with the way McPherson kicks, the 31's not technically the red zone, but it's in field goal range. The 35 is in field goal range because he made a 52-yarder. They took themselves out of the 31 and the 36 with stupid, dumb penalties or backwards plays that they left 6 points. Now, in the whole scheme of things, that doesn't matter. But I don't know. I just think that during the course of a ball game, if it's a one-score game instead of a two-score game, you call plays differently. If you're A&M, different things could happen. And so, yeah, it was futile, and there was a lot of it. That's not why Auburn lost the game. 6 points is not going to make the difference. But it was just, I think it was just a symptom of a bigger issue, of a bigger problem that they couldn't even, stay in field goal range.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about going into this, is if they can kind of punch them in the mouth early, that was a fan base that isn't super excited about their footing in the SEC, and I think their win yesterday probably enhances a little bit of that. Auburn could not take advantage of that whatsoever. But the concerning part of yesterday is I don't know if there's a clear path to fixing it right away, because a lot of people are calling out Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery in the play calling, and I don't think the play calling was that bad. There were guys consistently open downfield. Now, Darrell, you and I have talked about this before. We don't know what the called order of progression is for the wideouts, and so maybe it's the third and fourth option that are getting open. I kind of find that hard to believe. I'm just going to be honest, but I'm trying to give benefit of the doubt where I possibly can. But even if that's the case, they've got to fix something with how they're preparing these plays and how they're approaching it, because and that's the case. I mean, it's just, they're not good play calls. If your first and second options are covered and all the other options aren't, that to me is concerning in a different way. But so I don't think that's what's happening. There were guys that were consistently open, and you mentioned Jay Fair. He just flat out missed him. At least he targeted him, right? At least he found him and threw it. I'd rather him be a bad incompletion than you just not seeing him altogether. But there were just so many times where it's like, okay, there are two dudes open on this play, and that's just not where the attention of the quarterback is. So I'm not ready to say, okay, Hugh Freeze has to call plays now. Everything's Philip Montgomery's fault. I'm not in that camp. It's execution, and that's still on the coaching staff. Don't get me wrong, but that's almost more concerning, because I don't think you can just fix that at this point in the season.
All right. First of all, let's take this. Let's dissect this. Anybody on social media or what we saw with the fan base calling out Hugh Freeze and saying, hey, people thought it was Harson's fault, that kind of stuff is just moronic. It's absolutely embarrassing to have a fan base comment on stuff like that. It really is, and it makes us look stupid to the rest of the SEC, number one. Number two, we can't take this game like we have other games and pinpoint a problem area, because it was more than one issue. Anybody that thinks it's play calling or execution or Jimmy's and Joe's or the quarterback, it was all of it. Okay. I've been watching Auburn football for a very long time. The execution was poor, missing open receivers. Brendan Frazier on the helicopter move that Payton Thorne got spun in the air on 4th and 1, credit him for a gutsy run, but sure, Brendan Frazier would still be running right now if he'd have thrown the ball. Now, I heard somebody said he might have been ineligible. It was a run play all the way. Well, then that's play calling. Make that a run pass option, because the dude was wide open, and you throw it 10 yards and he walks in. The play that got tipped at the line of scrimmage, Zac, that Payton Thorne knocked down, that was called a lateral, if that goes to Jay Fair, that's a huge chunk. So the right play was called. It was just execution. But then there's other times where on 4th and 13 and you're in field goal range, you throw a backside screen to Fairweather, who gains 3 yards. That play call was just puzzling. So let's be very clear and very honest about this, and people can disagree. You can disagree. Everybody in the comment section can disagree. There were 4 or 5 components of this football game that we can point to and say, all of it is the reason why Auburn lost. The offensive line at times played horrible and got put. Texas A&M was in the backfield. We can talk about Payton Thorne holding on to the ball too long, and he did sometimes, but he also sometimes didn't even have time to look at a receiver downfield. That's the offensive line. We missed routes. We ran, when Robby came in the game and ran quarterback run, there's a couple of holes that looked like if he'd have taken that hole, it would have been a bigger game. Payton Thorne overthrowing people. The quarterback draw wasn't there. We talked about that. They spied and they took it away. They did a good job. I mean, there were missed tackles at some points of the game, even though the defense played really, really well and they were on the field so long. There were a lot of things: play calling, execution, individual performances, offensive line. There's a checklist of things that Auburn failed at miserably yesterday.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. The offensive line, I'm not as hard on them as some folks, but I mean, I think the way you said it was right. Sometimes it was their fault and sometimes it wasn't, right?
Not all 6 sacks were their fault. Let's just be honest. There were some that were
it was probably
coverage.
3 and 3, right? It was probably close to that down the middle.
And that's my exact point. There is plenty of blame to spread around, my friend. And, a coverage sack is exactly that. Payton Thorne didn't like his first option. His second option is check down, so he gets sacked. And then there were times where they were in the backfield right away and blew up our offensive line. So
or he would
there was just a variety.
Darrell within the pocket and step up. And I think it was Malcolm Johnson Jr. that's there, and he's about to throw, and he just did it. He just like stopped, and then he gets sacked. It's like, wow.
And then Robby throws a great ball in the end zone. I know people said, hell, that needs to be thrown to the pylon. It hit Hooks in the chest, which I'm starting to – there's a trend there. Yeah, shoulder pad, chest. I mean, the ball might have been underthrown a tad or whatever, but it was still – it hit him in the chest, catch the ball. And that's where from a receiver – I guess my frustration lies in the fact, Zac, that I thought we got that room corrected and improved and went out and got transfer portal guys. And why is when I watch other teams and other football teams, their receivers are open and they're catching the ball, and we're still not getting guys open in the secondary. And I guess the other thing too is on offense, our portal additions have woefully underachieved. They just have. There's no other way. Fairweather maybe not. Yeah, outside of the offensive line, Fairweather had his moments, but the receiving core, obviously the quarterback position. Look, I'm not. Payton Thorne has underachieved to this point 4 games in. This is not what Hugh Freeze thought he was getting at the quarterback position.
All right, let's talk about the quarterbacks. What do we do with that position moving forward in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn? Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is the best place to wager on all of your sports action. I told you on the show to take A&M minus the points. That certainly would have been correct, and it's wild how much that line was moving right before kickoff. We'll see what that Auburn-Georgia line is at the time of us recording this. That is not public yet. One book, I think, had it at 17.5. That seems low to me, but we'll see. But hey, check out our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. New customers who bet $5 will get $200 back in bonus bets. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. And of course, continue the college football season all season long. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Auburn Med Aesthetic. Guys, we've been there. It's the day before or even the day of an anniversary or a birthday or some sort of event or celebration where you need to get your significant other a gift. Well, I'm here to tell you, check out our friends at auburnmedaesthetics.com. Buying a gift card there is the easiest thing you can do. That's what their website is set up for. Get a gift card, whether it's for Botox or facials or laser treatments. Help your wife, girlfriend, significant other feel incredible. And they will also love meeting with Dr. Nancy Herring and her master esthetician, Circe Kelly. They've got over 15 years in the med spa biz. They're the best in the area. So head over to Auburn Med Aesthetic, get the full med spa experience as they serve the Auburn community. Gift card purchase is very easy at auburnmedaesthetics.com or stop by and see them on East Glen Avenue across from Chappie's. Remember, Auburn Med Aesthetics is perfect for last-minute gift cards. Guys, she will love it. Darrell Dapprich joining us as we recap this Auburn Texas A&M battle, whatever it was. The quarterback position is very interesting because, well, Payton Thorne did not look good. Let's just be very clear. And the issues that were there for the Cal game appeared worse against Texas A&M. Now, do I think the balance of run and pass made sense all the time? No. Do I think his receivers necessarily helped him out all the time? No, but also he didn't throw to open guys very often, which was on him because they were open. But Darrell, when they pulled Payton Thorne in the second half, I don't think they did it with any sort of plan, because at halftime, it was the first time all season where I'm like, I think putting Robby in for the rest of the game makes sense. I think it makes sense. And then after it was either a drive or two, it was sometime in the third quarter, they pulled Payton Thorne, put Robby Ashford in. I'm like, cool, this makes sense. And Robby wasn't really put in a situation to concede either, but whatever. I don't really want to necessarily talk about that. I want to talk about how they handled the personnel, because then when it was third and long a few times, they would take Robby out and put Payton in. And I'm like, what are we doing? What are we like? Are you giving Robby a chance to win the job? Or are you just kind of like buying? Like, what was the purpose of it? If you're not going to give Robby a chance to win the job and let him show everybody that he can run the offense, what's the point? What's the point of it?
Robby was at his best last year when we went up tempo, when he kind of played with a lot of energy and enthusiasm and improvised. And there were sparks of that in that one drive where Auburn ran the ball really good and Robby had a couple nice quarterback runs. There was no threat to pass the ball off of that. That is a concern because it makes you one-dimensional. But I just don't think that when they put him in the game, it was with a scheme or a plan that helped him or benefited him. Like,
right.
I understand having a scripted sheet or having your play calling, but I think your personnel sometimes should dictate what you run, not the other way around. And I see that too much where, we got so frustrated in the Gus Malzahn era when Stidham was made to do things that weren't his strengths, where we could have went 5 wide and thrown it all over the yard, and he had an arm talent for the NFL. When Robby's in the game, change the play calling, change the formations, change schemes, do something different than what you were running the first half of the game. And I didn't see that. I could have missed it, but it looked like the same thing. I just think you should change depending on your personnel, and you should be flexible enough and go into a game with that in your back pocket and go, okay, if Payton's in the game, we're going to call plays this way. If Robby's in, we've got to change it up. It's got to be a change up on offense, on philosophy, on scheme. I'm not seeing that, and that's frustrating. That goes back to exactly what we talked about when we started. It's a variety of issues. It's a bunch of symptoms right now that when you said 5 minutes ago, it's kind of haunting. We don't know what the answer is. There's no quick fix for this. It's not like you can get into the laboratory from now until Georgia and try to come up with a game plan to get this corrected. I think you're ride or die right now with what you're at, and you're going to have to, it's going to be a bumpy ride. It just is.
Yeah. And I don't even know what road we're on, right? If we're going to keep this analogy and metaphor going, some of this, and you talked about this a second ago when you were talking about the offensive line with Robby, did he sometimes go up the wrong holes or whatever? And to me, it always seems like he's wanting to go outside and kind of hit the home run, but he doesn't know when he's going to be taken out again. So I don't really even blame him for that.
And is the offensive line blocking different? Are they blocking like to me, the offensive line should block differently when Robby's in the game than when Payton Thorne's in the game. Just like there's a difference when you cut or block with a passing quarterback or a running quarterback, you have to hold your blocks longer. If it's there's all those little nuances of playing offensive tackle when you have a different quarterback there in style. I don't think that they're seeing that. There's no difference there. I don't know. I don't know if they're being taught that. If let him come upfield because Robby's going to go right by him, but you hold your blocks longer if Payton Thorne's the quarterback because he's got to look downfield for the big. All those little nuances. I'm not a coach, but I'm wondering because that's why he's running. Like you said, he's trying to go outside, and they're pass blocking in a different scheme for a different quarterback. I don't know. It's frustrating. Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on.
I don't think I noticed that as much, but as far as okay, it's second and long because that's seems to be a trend. And Robby's
that's the highlight tape.
Yeah, that's right. All right, first down, we're not going to do anything. But
yeah,
so if it's second down and Robby's running it, it kind of feels like to me he needs to get a first down, or there's a solid chance they're going to take him out and put Payton in on third down. Which I don't know who that benefits. That doesn't put Payton in a good situation, doesn't put Robby in a good situation. I just don't get it. I do not get it. That would have been a prime opportunity to let Robby run his part of the offense just to see if that's what the answer is. And then on third and long, they just would take him out and put Payton. I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense. And look, I'm not about the multi-quarterback thing. I'm just not. There's a few situations where it was third and short and fourth and short. And I'm like, this is when you would use Robby, but they did the whole rollout thing that you already highlighted and he got it barely. I'm a little surprised it wasn't reviewed, but he got it. And it's okay, all right, well, it's a good thing we got it, but I feel like that's why you have the Robby packages is for that fourth and short stuff. But that's why teams don't do this. That's why teams don't have two quarterbacks. It's all of these things that we're talking about. And once again, it's not anybody's fault. There's not a whole lot of examples to point to and say, this is how you do this. And so they're kind of feels like they're making it up as they go along. and it's not working. And I don't think it's either quarterback's fault. It's just that part of it, as far as the personnel of the quarterback position and the snaps given to each of them, there's not any situation where it makes sense. I just have a hard time buying it with anything that they've done so far.
I think it's difficult to say this, and because I have been completely in this corner and supportive of this whole scenario. My only concern is when you talk about fault, or it's no one's fault or blame, ultimately this coaching staff's job was to either develop Robby in the offseason to be QB1 or go find one that's better, markedly better. They didn't do that. Through the first 4 games this season, I'm sorry, I'm calling a spade. There's no quarterback separation. When you play 2 dudes, you don't have a front runner. You don't. And so my point is, then why bring somebody in? And I hope Payton Thorne gets it turned around. I've been the biggest, I thought he was going to get it done. I talked about what he did on the road in the Big Ten.
Right.
But look, it's a results-oriented game. And to this point, through 4 games, 2 lesser opponents, 2 Power 5s, I haven't seen it. Doesn't mean we won't. Doesn't mean we can't. But if you want to just look at where it all went, where it's going wrong in the quarterback room, it's lack of development with one because you brought someone else in you thought was markedly better. And at this point, it's too close. The margin is, so now you're playing 2, it's disjointed, it's discombobulated, and it's not flowing at all. And, this has been the theme the last 2 years. Actually 3. There was a faction of 2021 where people thought TJ Finley should be playing over Bo Nix, and Bo Nix got benched for a little bit. And so, I would really like to see Auburn identify their quarterback, stick with him. And at this point, unless there's marked improvement, it's just going to be a tug of war back and forth the rest of the year. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's best for the team to pick one. I don't care who it is at this point. I wish they would have given Robby more of a shot yesterday. I think that would have been the best upside for this team, and they didn't do it. I don't feel like they gave him a real legitimate shot yesterday, which is a shame.
Yep.
So as far as moving forward, you already hinted at it. Georgia comes to town, which is way better than Texas A&M. Then you get a bye week. Then you go to LSU, and then you host Ole Miss. It's tough. We talked about this last week. Like, if you win one of these 4, you've got a chance to have a really good season. And by really good, I mean 8 wins. But you said it last week, and I think I agreed with you. Of those 4, A&M would have been the easiest of those 4. Then I think Ole Miss, and then I think there's probably a big gap. And then it's LSU, Georgia. Probably.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's probably what you say.
There's a caveat to that, but yeah, I mean, I said but I wanted to await the outcome of the Ole Miss Alabama game to see where I felt the pecking order was. And I'm just my opinion, having watched that game yesterday, I think A&M's a better football team than Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss right now is the more winnable game because it's at home, and I didn't see anything. Here's the thing about where we go forward. I'm going to try to keep this in perspective and understand that we talked about this could happen, and you don't want to lose the team. The coaching staff has to understand where this team is in this gauntlet. You don't want one loss to become a 4-loss season. There are still some very winnable games on this schedule, especially looking around the SEC. Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, New Mexico. Alabama won last night. That game, that Iron Bowl, anything could happen. The Ole Miss game. So you keep your head and your wits about you. You kind of look at this season at segments. Historically, right now is what's hurting Auburn and the fan base and the quick knee-jerk reaction. Every coach since Terry Bowden that took over their first year, except Tuberville, had instant success year 1. They just did. We got spoiled as a fan base. Bowden went undefeated. Chiswick won 9 games. Malzahn played for a national championship. Only Tommy Tuberville, he won 5 games his first year. Now, there were some moments. They were one Iron Bowl win away from going to the bowl game against Alabama at Jordan-Hare, but he built something that first year, only won 5 games, and you could see it and you knew it was coming. This season, this team may be more like that Tuberville first year than what we've been spoiled with previously. I still feel like they get to 7 wins. I just do. I just have this feeling that they're going to win again, that they can beat Ole Miss, they can beat Vandy, Mississippi State, New Mexico State, and boom, you're there. You're at 7. And so, I think there's a lot to play for. I think we need to keep that in perspective. I think even mid quarterback play, just don't turn it over. Don't be disastrous. Be a game manager, can get you 4 more wins on the schedule.
I agree with that. Look, I thought Auburn was a 7-5 football team at the start of the year. I thought it after Cal. I thought it going into A&M. I think it after A&M, because I had Auburn losing these next 4 games when we did our final offseason show. A lot of people said a lot of mean things. It's fine, whatever. Look, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope Auburn beats either Georgia, LSU, or Ole Miss, or all of them. That'd be great. But I don't think that prediction's too far off now. I still think Auburn wins in Arkansas. I still think Auburn beats Mississippi State at home. I think they win in Vanderbilt. I think they beat New Mexico State. And then the Iron Bowl, I think, is actually closer, more of a toss-up than some of these other games that are actually coming up. So Auburn still has the opportunity for success to 7 or 8 wins on their schedule, but we're going to have to weather the next month. The next month is going to be really, really tough.
And the difficult thing,
really, really hard.
And Zac, having to do that with how thin and depleted we are becoming from an injury standpoint is making this task even more difficult. I mean, we didn't go into the season thinking that all these rash of injuries in the secondary and that kind of thing was going to happen, and it did, and that makes it harder. But again, if you're going to have them, you have them towards this absolutely gauntlet part of the schedule where you probably weren't going to be favored to win these games anyway, and hopefully you get these guys back for those 5 games that you should be favored in and that you could win, and you have them, because the games against Georgia and LSU might not be difference makers anyway, but against Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, they could be. And
I'd rather have Donovan Kaufman and Keontae Scott versus Ole Miss.
Amen.
And then, point, Darrell.
And I don't know about Austin and his shoulder. Maybe he's back for the final third of the season. But I will say this, I'm trying to glean something positive from this. It's been very difficult without drinking a 5th of Jack Daniels. I think Brian Battie really emerged yesterday as a nice second option at running back, filling in for Damari Alston, and give Cobb the ball more. But the running back room is still going to be there all year. And I think that's something to be positive about.
Brian Battie has a knack for knowing when to burst, when to hit that next gear. And it's not always when he turns the corner. Sometimes it's a few steps before, sometimes it's a few steps after. That was nice. That was nice to see. I hope we see more of him moving forward. And I also hope we see more of Damari Alston and Jarquez.
What'd you think of the
Jeremiah Cobb? How
about the Sean Jackson run? Did you get a little nervous that you're going to lose that bet, brother? After that nice long run?
What was the number we were at?
100, and I think he's got like 70. Doesn't he have 70 yards through? And he's going to get some carries against New Mexico State. That's a team that UMass beat.
Our number was 100 for that? For
100 yards. I see he's going to get 100
sure?
yards. We could go back to the tape. I think I said 100 yards, that he would pitch in 100. If I said 200, then I'll lose that bet. But I thought I said 100.
I think it was 200. I'm trying to look.
Then I'll lose. Maybe it was, but I'll lose. But I mean, unless he breaks off a monster game. I don't know. They used him in this game last night or yesterday in situations that weren't garbage time.
That's true.
And so
they put him in with Gurner when Gurner went in.
Well, they also had him in on the 4th and 1 that Thorne got helicoptered.
He was the lone
set. Yeah, he was the lone back in the backfield, and they faked the toss, the pitch to him and bootlegged it, which I loved the call. I just would like to see that call and drag the tight end like they did off of it, because you've got 2 options there.
I'm with you. All right. We'll be back tomorrow. Darrell Dapprich, how can people check out everything you've got going on, buddy?
You can follow me at DAP6410. A lot of fun on Twitter yesterday. Woo! You can also catch me in the Discord and then on Monday mornings and Tuesday afternoons on various Auburn Network shows.
Read all of our written work at auburndaily.com. A lot of stuff up there yesterday. There will be a lot of stuff up there today. And, of course, Lindsey Crosby will join me tomorrow. By the way, thank you to Lindsey. Thank you to you, Darrell, for filling in and stepping up and helping me out on Friday. But good to be back home in the great state of Alabama. Be sure to follow me on socials at Zac Blackerby. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.